Friends, from today, we are going to begin with unit number 2. And in this unit number 2, we are going to talk about the methods for literature, research methods for literature, in which the first method we are using is of structuralism. Please understand, my friends, structuralism in itself is a complete, detailed study of a theory. But here, for the sake of our own studies, we are not going deep and we are not discussing the whole theory minutely, because this is what a sort of introductory information is given to you so that you can able to understand that what are the different theories that you can use it in pursuing your postgraduate research, and how can you able to find out all those things. The very interesting and important thing that we need to understand and record it with ourselves, that we are not going to use the theory as it is when we are going to start with our research. We are taking theory in the background, we are taking the support of that theory, and based on that theory we are going to elaborate the text which you are going to which you will choose for your research. So please understand that you are not following the theory as it is, but you are taking the terms and ideas of that theory and try to use that into your text, that which you are going to use it as per your hypothesis which you have developed in your dissertation. Now, if you see very carefully, structuralism is actually a very well known, well debated, well discussed idea. And this is one of the very most important idea you will find it out in understanding of, you can say, the whole texture of your literature. So it is most important. And another thing is that you will find out a lot of even uh, pages on internet also based on structuralism. Certain basic text I will suggest at the even at the beginning of our lecture, because most of the time students in the last few minutes ask me some names of the book which I will give you at the end of the lecture. But for this unit of theory which you are going to study, I'll recommend few books which are quite possible you can get it in the library, or else if you want to, because my humble suggestion to most of my students is that you should have your own personal library with certain important books that are with you, in which I'll suggest one book, that is Beginning Theory. It is by Peter Barry. This book is one of the best books that you can ever have for any sort of theories that are part of your understanding. Now, please understand, this beginning theory is not simply related to the literature, but it can be used at various levels, even for the studies of social sciences, or even the studies that you want to pursue in any form of literature. You can use this particular book. Beginning Theory is one of the most interesting book. Number one. Another book you can able to find it out is Literary Theory, a Guide for the Perplexed. This is another book. Literary Theory, a Guide for the Perplexed. Or you can have a Reader's Guide to Contemporary Literary Theory by Raman Selden. These are few books that you can able to find it out, and you can able to get all the info, all the ideas, and the detailed study of all those things. Let us begin with the first ever idea of structuralism. I can say that structuralism is actually a way of thinking that works to find fundamental basic units. Please understand. It works to find fundamental basic units or elements of which anything is made. Structuralism basically takes its impetus from Aristotelian science. And I can say more specifically from the developments in chemistry and physics in 19th century that established that all matter was made up of molecules, and all molecules were made up of atoms, atoms. And even we know that atoms themselves consist of many different kinds of subatomic particles. But we usually follow that atom is the basic building block of all the matter. Everything in the universe is made up of atoms. That is what chemistry used to talk about. A structuralist analysis of a pencil, for example, might look at how many atoms or how certain kinds of atoms are combined in the pattern to make pencil, to follow a rule that a wood and a graphite cylinder coming together, and we are writing with the help of that particular matter. Structuralism, if you understand very carefully, if you get something of it, very basic I am talking about, appears in variety of disciplines. I'm saying not only in literature, it appears in varieties of disciplines and fields. You can take example, or you can say that anthropology, linguistics, mathematics, literature, cultural studies, criticism, any field you want to take. As I said earlier also, that it is one of the most important theory of literature and even of social sciences. In any field, a structuralist is always interested in finding the basic elements that we call as unit, the units that make up the whole system. And the system is running with the help of certain rules. And those rules govern how those units need to be combined. That is the very simple thing a structuralist will analyze in this particular fashion. There is a minimal unit, and that unit is governed by certain rules, how to combine the units. A general common thing of science, as we know it very well, that uh, water is made up of water is called in chemistry as H2O. It is a very common thing. Everyone knows, whether he is a student of science or not. A minimal unit is hydrogen and oxygen. Two molecules of hydrogen, one molecule of oxygen. Now, if you are saying, I'll say OH2, whether it is going to be a basic structure of water, nobody will agree to. Nobody will accept it. They'll say that what units you are saying, what are the basic structure you are saying is quite right. One oxygen, two hydrogen. It is correct. It is right. But the combination of it, it has a rule how to combine it. And that rule is hydrogen will come first and oxygen will come afterwards. That is a rule. I'm not going into a chemical analysis of it and detail of it, but there are general rule. That's why you have to accept it that it is H2 and then O. That's why you need to understand that there is a rule how to combine this minimum unit. And this is what, my friends, you will find out that structuralism or structuralist will able to find out that thing in such a simple way. Now, I'll try to make it very simple at first for you to understand. A structuralist analysis is not concerned with anything beyond the interrelationship of units and rules. A structuralist analysis will not go beyond these two things: unit, the interrelationship of unit, and rules. He will look at that particular thing. This is what a basic structuralist or structural analysis, you will find out, takes place. Now the question comes, how does this relate to literature? A structuralist or a structuralist view of any literary text would start by asking one simple question: what are the most basic units in this text? Or I can say in chemical language, what are the atoms of the text? Well, a literary text, like any other kind of text, written text, is made up of language. So, structuralist analysis of literature would start with a structural examination of language itself. It will start with the structural analysis of language with itself. Linguistics, linguistics is science of language. Linguistic was one of the first and foremost important discipline which has accepted structuralist perspective, because what sort of operation that a structuralist analysis will go or structuralism will do fits to linguistic, and it is fit to the structuralist framework. All languages, any language in the world, is made of units. That units are combined according to the rules to make meaning or sense. Now, the basic atom of language, if I say, the basic atom of language is word. Or more strictly, if I speak in linguistic terminology, the basic atom of language is phoneme, 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 which make the sounds that make up words. Please understand, language is the only thing which requires two, which appears in a two mode. One is spoken and second is written. So how will you speak? How will you pronounce? That pronounce, the pronunciation will be converted into written format, and that you call it as a written word. So phoneme is the basic sound which you pronounce, that is converted into form of word in writing. So basic is phoneme. And the rules which you follow to form any sentence with the help of words, that rule is called as grammar. The grammar tells you very simple thing, how to put words together to make a complete sentence. A sentence is made up of its own structure. The sentence structure of sentence is different from language to language. And that's why grammar rules are also different from language to language. The common structure of a sentence in English is subject, verb, object. That is a very basic common structure of sentence in English, basically. A minimum basic structure of English language. Subject, verb, object, SVO. Then adverb A. You can add various things into it. That is another aspect that you will study it in grammar, language orientation paper. You can study that thing in detail. So basic structure is subject, verb, object. It is rule made by followed made by grammar, and we follow that grammar throughout. Every language has its own grammar, and grammar of every language is somehow little bit different. So as the words and phonemes of that particular language. But what is the common thing in all the language? The structure is same. What is the structure of language? Word or phoneme, that is basic unit, and to combine the unit, the interrelation between unit and rules, the rules are made up by grammar. So there is a combination of unit and rules. It is somehow you can able to bring together. Words are put together within grammatical system. Why? Because that rules will give us sense or meaning of that particular sentence. Now, part of the appeal of structuralism is like this. Please understand. I made it very simple, basic for you to get understand what exactly it is talking about. Like almost like a science, I can say, because it reduces complex system into their most fundamental parts, going up to minimum. What is basic you are going to talk about, because in science also, if you see very carefully, structuralist analysis makes the claim to universality. They're talking about universality. The rule applies for the whole universe. And to finding the structures or elements that are common to all cultures at all times in all the parts of the world. That's why it becomes universal. Rising of a sun is a universal activity. Why it is universal activity? It is common to all people. The sun will rise at its own time. It will be in all the area of the world. So it is universal. The quest that a common person is having, quest for universal or timeless truth, as we have seen, is basically central focus of humanist worldview, and becomes problematic when the construction of universality serves to mask or erase important differences between cultures, time period, and belief systems. Structuralist or structuralist analysis bypass all these questions of humanism. It is not trying to enter into the ideas of humanism. A structure can be universal and the same in all times and cultures, precisely because it is only structure. I can say only skeleton, a framework. If you see skeleton of any human, whether he is black, whether he is white, whether he belongs to any religion, whether he belongs to any caste, creed, of any time, the skeleton is the same. The rest of the things may vary. framework. Similarly, literature is also having its own framework on which the content is built. Now, from structuralists' perspective, all human beings would be fundamentally the same because, as I said, all of us share the same skeleton. From if you understand this point of view, that every human being, whosoever you will consider the first person on this earth, whether it is according to the religions Adam, or if you think that as per Darwin, it was the shift from monkey to human, any first person, we are not interested in that. But from that first man up to today's man, skeleton is the same. Things have changed. Skin color changed, brain may be changed, or anything. Have a sharp brain, but somebody is not having brain. That is the another interesting issue to talk about. But the basic unit or basic skeleton is the same. From the same viewpoint, if you follow, all languages in this world are same because all have same structure. You cannot say there is no same structure in all the language. You cannot claim it. Why? Because every language is having word, and to combine words and to give you a sense of that particular word, combination of words coming together, giving you the sense with a specific rule that is called as grammar. The grammar may be different, but there is a grammar. Whatever kinds of words they may use, whatever kinds of sentence structure they may have, but they will follow with certain rules. That rules is grammar. Now, if you see very carefully, the structuralists, when they are talking, these structuralists, you can say, you can find it out that structuralism sees itself as a science of humankind and works to uncover all of the structures that underlie all the things that human do, think, perceive, and even feel. In any discipline, whether it is in mathematics, whether it is in biology, whether it is linguistic, whether it is religion or psychology or literature, take any one of it. Structuralists believe that the mechanism which organize units and rules into meaningful system come from human mind itself, which acts as structuring mechanism that looks at unit and files them according to the rule. This means, my friends, for structuralists, the order which we perceive in the world is not inherent in the world. It is not carried forward in the same way into this world. Because as I said, every brain is different, although the structure is same. So the product of organizing capacity of our mind changes The thing with certain rules, please understand, it is a scientific and logic understanding that there is no reality out of this understanding. Or you can say that that reality is somehow have your mind construct it, have your mind mix it, how it attaches. That reality is somehow beyond human perception. You cannot able to locate it very quickly, or you have to make a lot of research, and that research is going on. You cannot make an alternate mind. You are making some part of it. You are making memories. You have got memory card. You have got all those things in terabyte and gigabyte and all what bytes you have. You are you have to understand the very interesting fact that there is too much reality, too many units of too many kinds, which need to be perceived coherently without some sort of grammar or system, and to organize them and to arrange them. And that's why structuralism has some kind of universal human characteristics or activities. Structuralist analysis posits the capacity of the human mind to create organizing system as a cultural universe. And they try to seize that the structures created as fundamentally the same in all the time and in all the places. For example, I'll give a simple example for you to understand this thing. Every human culture has some sort of language, and every language has some basic structure. You can say word or sounds, and those words and sounds are combined according to grammar of the rules, which produces meanings. Now, every human culture similarly has some sort of social organizations like government, some sort of system that determine that who can marry with whom, your language institutions, some sort of system which is called as an exchanging of goods like economic system. Now, all these modes of organizing human life, it proceed, the human life proceed according to structuralist analysis. And that structuralist analysis are from universal structures defined by human beings. So you cannot say that structuralism is only related with somehow with only one particular thing. It is related with all the things that are part of it. Now, if you see very carefully, my friends, structuralism, I have told you, I have tried to make you to get familiar with what exactly it means by structuralism. Now let us move towards its history. The structuralism, you can say, is a is an intellectual movement. That intellectual movement began in France in 1950s, and the pioneer, the first person who worked on this idea of structuralism, who developed the idea of structuralism, was anthropologist, not linguist, anthropologist Claude Levi-Strauss, Claude, Claude Levi, Levi dash Strauss, Strauss. The anthropologist who worked first on structuralism was Claude Levi-Strauss, and literary critic Roland Barthes. The friends, it is very much, as I said to you, that if you try to boil structuralism down to a single bottom line, what exactly it is very much difficult to say. But if I try to say so, which I have said you for last half an hour, that what exactly it is that structuralist or structuralism talks about, I would say that its essence of structuralism is the belief that things cannot be understood in isolation. If you want to understand something, you cannot understand the thing separately in isolated form. They have to be seen in the context of larger structure, as they are part of that larger structure. Hence the term becomes structuralism, because you have to understand it in the larger context of the structure, larger structure. If you want to understand human being, you have to understand in the larger context of civilization or culture. Then and then it is possible for us to understand properly of human. It was become a very serious part of studies in Britain almost in 1970s, and it influenced throughout 1980s. Now the structures in question here are those which are imposed by our way of perceiving the world, how we perceive the world, and how we organize the whole experience. Rather than objective entities which are already existing in the external world, you are not able to. What is your own experience? How you perceive the world, and what sort of experience you have. It follows from this that the meaning or significance isn't a kind of core or essence inside the things. Things are not inside. You'll find out, my friends, that it is not coming into that particular structure. What is important into it is the meaning is always outside, not inside. Meaning is always attributed to the things, If you say in literal sense, that meanings are attributed to the things by human mind. Meanings are not inside it. Let us. I'll make it a little bit clear to you. I'll give very simple understanding of that particular thing. If you are taking a very common thing into your understanding, and if you're taking it very commonly, that how will you look at it, how will you follow it, then you will get the thing to know very easily. The very basic thing that it wants to talk, it wants to discuss. I'll give example of one of the poems by John Donne. There is a very famous poem of John Donne. When you study the first paper poetry, you will find it out there. Donne's very famous poet, Good Morrow. Now, when you say Good Morrow, that commonly it is understood that it is a poem. It comes into the genre of poem, large context poem. And in English language, the phrase which is used by Donne, Good Morrow, it is having its own conventions. Usually in 12th century in England, there was a genre called Alba, A-L-B-A. This Alba, or you can say in simple word, dawn song, D-A-W-N, dawn. Early morning, before the sunrise, that is dawn song. Because in 12th century, it was mentioned that the lovers will always feel, you can say, sad on the approaching of daybreak, because day is coming out and they have to get departed. They have to leave them. They have to go away. Now, if you know Alba very well, the idea of Alba very well, then it will be easy for us to understand. If we know it very well, it will be easy for us to understand the whole poem called Good Morning. That means we are not talking of only a poem. What we are talking of? We are talking of a complete culture, going back, trying to understand the context of that particular. Please understand very simple thing, that if you want to know any sort of experience that a poet is trying to build up, you need to understand, or not only poem, any kind of literary work that you are trying to understand it, you need to understand it in larger context. That's what I am saying again and again. The larger context is its genre. The genre is having its own cultural understanding, which is universal. And structuralist approach to literature is that there is a constant movement, constant movement which is taking away from the interpretation of individual literary work, because in a humanist way of understanding of literary work, we are talking to an individual literary work without considering its context, without understanding it with larger abstract structures that it contains. Any literary work of art, when it is being produced, that literary work of art is not simply becoming a literary work of art because it has got its individual value. No, because it has got certain important meaning hidden inside it with a larger context. And that's why we need to understand very carefully that how you are shifting from text based understanding of any literary text to a wider abstract issues and ideas that made that text or that made the writing to happen, that made that writing should take place. So literary or structuralist or structuralism, if you see very carefully, is trying to ask a long repressed question or questions, I may say. What are those questions that structuralism is trying to ask again and again? The very basic question structuralism wants to ask again and again. That is, first one is, what do you mean by literary? What is literary? Another question that structuralism is trying to ask is, how do the how do narratives work? And another very interesting question that they ask, what is a poetic structure? Because if you try to ask these basic things, naturally, my friends, these basic things make you to go to a larger context and abstract issues and ideas which produces that kind of literature. In this regard, this is what you can say a general understanding of structuralism. And till now, I have tried to make you to understand basic thing. This is what we call it as structuralism. This is what we call it as structure, and how this structuralism in general works. Now, though structuralism, as I said, started from 1950s in Britain, and Claude Lévi-Strauss, the anthropologist, initiated it. But to understand it in the form of language, in 50s and 60s, 1950s and 1960s, Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure, Ferdinand, 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 D E small, Saussure, S capital, Sausure. Ferdinand de Saussure was a key figure in the development of modern approaches to language study. In 19th century, linguist scholars had mainly been interested in historical aspects of language. That means historical development of language and connections between them, and they are speculating about the origins of language itself. But Saussure concentrated, instead of patterns and functions of language, Saussure concentrated on functions of language, patterns of language that are used today. He emphasized on how meanings are maintained, how meanings are established, on the functions of grammatical structure. But what exactly did Saussure say about linguistic structures, which structuralists found so interesting in it? We can say that Ferdinand de Saussure emphasized very important, very interesting. Saussure emphasized that the meanings which we give to the words, as I said, every activity is human related with human mind. And that's why I said it is absolutely having its rationale and logic. It's absolutely a scientific theory. What Saussure did, Ferdinand de Saussure firstly emphasized that the meanings which we give to the words are purely arbitrary. The meanings which we give to any word is arbitrary. That these meanings which we give to the words are maintained by conventions only. What he said, words are unmotivated sign, unmotivated signs. Words are unmotivated signs, meaning that there is no inherent connection between a word and what it designates. There is no inherent connection between the words and what it designates. He gave a very interesting example. For example, the word called hut, H-U-T. Now, if I say only the word hut, it is not in any way, you can say, appropriate to its meaning, and all the linguistic signs which are with it, H, U, T, S, all these are the linguistic signs. What are the alphabets? They are signs. If you know it, that Chinese language is a pictorial language, where they have to draw every picture. And that's why it is difficult to understand. It is difficult to learn. Every alphabet is a sign, a typical kind of sign. We collect the signs together and make a different sign. All the signs, linguistic signs, are arbitrary here. Because the words which you constitute, with different signs combining together, there is no relationship between these two signs, except the word onomatopic sounds. Onomatopic sounds like hiss. What you pronounce, you write in the same fashion. But even these things vary between languages and languages. I'm talking especially of English. Otherwise, you will say, sir, in Marathi, what we speak, we write in the same fashion. But what signs you collect together, we don't have any idea that why we are collecting this sound, because it's a convention to collect it. conventionally be collected. That's why Saussure says that linguistic signs are arbitrary, as Plato said it in his writings, in ancient Greek writings. He said this thing: signs are arbitrary. But what is the new concept you have to emphasize is that, and basically structuralists were interested in, that if language is a science system, because it's a science system, it is nothing else. It is based on arbitrariness of this kind, then it follows that language isn't a reflection of a world and of experience, but a system which stands quite separate from it. I'll repeat it and we'll explain it in later phase what this means by. Language, if a language is a science system, is based on arbitrariness of this kind. I said, what is arbitrariness? The combination of the signs together. Arbitrariness of this kind. And then it follows that language isn't a reflection of world and of experience, but a system to express it, which stands quite separate from all these things. Second thing, Saussure emphasized that meanings of words are what we might call relational. That is to say, no word can be defined in isolation. You cannot take one word and say, I'll define this whole thing. No, no word is able to express itself without the support of either its earlier word or latter word. The definition of any given word depends upon its relation with other adjoining words. You cannot say, I can understand only one word. No, it has got, if you're understanding that single word, you are having the conventions for it, which made you to understand that word. Otherwise, in a sentence, when you try to understand that word, it has got a relationship of its adjoining words, either pre or post. Then and then it is possible for you to understand the whole meaning, what it wants to say. Take the same example of the word hut, which Saussure even has tried to analyze it with the help of this word. Now, this hut, H-U-T, depends for its precise meaning on its position in the complete paradigmatic chain. In the whole chain of the word, in the sentence, it is placed at a proper, as per the rules, and it is giving meaning according to the adjoining words. Now, there can be, you can say, there is a substitute for this word. Or you can use substitute for this word, this paradigmatic chain, the chain which is there. You can have any alternative word: hovel, shed, house, mansion, palace. But the meaning of any of these words would be altered if any one of the other word removed from the chain. The meaning will be changed. Because hut and shed in this whole, the six words which I uttered: hovel, shed, hut, house, mansion, palace. If you see in this chain, Hut and shade, both words are referring to small and basic structures. This whole chain, only two words referring to this. But they are not the same thing, because primarily you can say shelter. A night watchman's hut, for instance, you can say, is sitting under the shelter. But he's sitting under shelter, that we call it as a shade. The one thing where you want to sit. But other is primarily used for storage. If you try to understand both these meanings have to understand with its context. So you have to understand every word, everything with its context, otherwise you are not able to understand. Similarly, you can say mansion can be defined as a dwelling which is bigger and grandeur than mere house. Mansion doesn't mean house. Mansion means house, but it is a bigger one, so that we call it as a mansion. A big and a grand palace. Palace is not mansion. Palace is bigger than mansion. So everything, if you try to find it out, that if you define mansion by explaining how its meaning relates to that of two words on either side of it, how its meaning is related with it. If we have paired opposite, then this mutually defining aspect of word is even more easy to understand if we join it with opposite. For example, male, female, because if you designate one thing, if you try to explain it with adjoining opposites together, it will be easy for us to understand the meaning of it comfortably. Now, if I'm saying male and female, each designates the absence of the characteristics included in the other. So, male can be seen mainly, commonly, and general meaning to understand, not female. Or you can say female means not male. Similarly, you can say day without linked to the concept night, or you cannot understand good if you don't know about bad. If you want to understand, if there is a classroom, I would show it on the board, that if you want to say that this is a white dot made by chalk, how will you able to understand that it is white? Because the whole background is black. That's why you can able to understand it is white. Or how you can able to understand black? Because the whole background is white, and you can easily understand that this is white and this is black. That means there is a sort of relation. This is why I have given these various examples. Why? To make you to understand the relational feature, because this relational aspect of language. That's why I said every language. That's why I said he emphasized that meanings are relational. So Sur emphasized that meanings are relational. Why meanings are relational? Because this relational aspect of language, you have to create a relation to understand that particular word or that particular sentence, that particular language. It's a very basic thing. And Sassoon is insisting on this basic thing. And what he make a very famous remark. I read that remark and then I'll stop. Tomorrow we'll continue with further discussion on what Sassoon talks about. He made a remark that in a language, there are only differences without fixed terms. There are differences without fixed terms. You have to relate it with each other. All the words that existing in different networks, they have to paired opposites, and like the paradigmatic chain of placing it at proper positions so that you can able to get meaning. Saussure explains it by giving very famous example. Saussure says that there is no fixed meanings in language. There is no fixed meaning in language. He gave example that at 8:25 there's an express train from Geneva to Paris. Now, what is that gives this train an identity? It isn't anything material, please understand. Because at 8:25 there is not going to be the same engine. Every day there is a different engine, there are different bogies, there are different uh, drivers, there are different passengers. If it is late, it won't even leave at 8:25. Does it even have to be a train then? Saussure says that I asked once at Southampton station for a Brighton train, and the ticket collector pointed out towards bus stand, saying that go to that bus station. That is it. When he asked for the train, he showed the bus. That is it. Why? Because it was Sunday, and as you see in Mumbai, there is a mega block on Sunday. So there was a block because of certain engineering work. So instead of train, they are sending the passengers through the bus. Now, sometimes then a train doesn't have to be a train. Because you reach to station for sitting in a train, but you made to sit on in a bus because of certain reasons. So it is not essentially that a train should be called as a train always. Saussure's conclusion is that the only thing which gives this train its identity is its position in a structure of differences. Its position. It comes between 7:25 and 9:25, and that's why its identity is purely relational. It is relational to the situation, it is relational to the condition. And that's why everything is related to the situation, and that's why he said that language is always having its own meaning. There is no fixed meaning to it. We'll talk about what Saussure says in the rest of the lectures. Okay, friends? Thank you.